Hey guys, it is often said that truth is stranger than fiction. Well, if you're in the mood for something that's strange and true, it's time that you learned about Robert the Doll.
As a child, who hasn't dreamed of a favorite doll or a teddy bear coming to life and being a very best friend forever and ever? Robert Eugene Otto had a doll who stayed with him his whole life. An artist and his muse in eccentric Key West, Florida. This doll was given to the 6-year-old Robert Eugene by the family's Bahamian maid, who was said to practice voodoo. It was the perfect likeness of the young boy and was even named Robert after him. As a young boy, Eugene developed a strange fascination with Robert. He spent long hours alone with his doll, talking to it. And when anything went wrong at home, Eugene always knew who to blame. It was Robert, he would tell his parents. Robert did it. Robert did it. Eugene Otto became one of the most celebrated artists in this famous artists' colony. His fame grew beyond the southerly Keys, as did his wealth. He preferred to paint in seclusion, alone, indoors, and with Robert always by his side. Eugene settled down with his wife Anne here at the artist's house close to Duval Street in Key West. Robert, of course, went with them. Anne disliked the doll from the moment she first saw it. It gave her chills just to look at it, and she didn't like her husband's obsession with it. Still, she humored him, and Robert was given a room of his very own, away in the attic. There he stayed until Eugene told his wife that Robert was angry and demanding a room with a view. Despite Anne's objections, he moved Robert out of the attic and down to the turret room. Robert was seated at the window looking out over the street. Children on their way to school said they saw Robert through the windows moving about the turret room, glowering at them. Inside the house, Eugene became increasingly irrational and violent, smashing things and lashing out at his wife and screaming like a madman. And then all of a sudden, he would be himself again, and he would always say exactly the same thing. It was Robert. Robert did it. Robert's influence seemed to grow stronger and stronger. A plumber working alone in the turret room with Robert fled the house in terror. He later said he'd heard Robert giggling. Other visitors swore that Robert's expression changed when they looked at him. Sometimes they said that he looked like pure evil. Eugene became sicker and sicker, becoming so despondent he locked himself away in the turret room until he finally died with Robert the doll by his side. Free at last, Anne fled the house, leaving Robert behind in the attic. The new owners discovered him soon after moving in. They took one look at Robert and knew that this, whatever it was something they definitely didn't want in their home. Robert ended up here, awaiting visitors in the East Martello Museum, where he holds an eerie fascination for everyone who sees him. Visitors to the museum, completely ignorant of this strange story, have been shocked as the expression on his face apparently changed before their very eyes. A psychic investigator said that Robert's soul is slowly dying, his hair turning white as he grows older. Today, the artist's house where Robert once lived is a guest house, Stay a night, if you will. Go ahead. He's still here, in the darkest recesses of the attic, say the staff, who avoid coming up here. And after her death, Eugene's wife Anne appeared here too. Her ghost stalks the turret room. Anne is trapped here now with Robert, the doll. And as for Robert, the artist, he tragically discovered that the things we love to possess sometimes end up possessing us.
Pretty spooky story, right? But of course, this perfectly serviceable story had to have a film adaptation that sucks all the scary right out of it. This is Robert. Our movie opens on what every great horror film opens on. A boring block of text telling us that a doll named Robert is bad news. Why do we have to read this? At least the Texas Chainsaw Massacre had the courtesy of being narrated by John Larroquette. Couldn't we be seeing some case photos associated with the horrible things that are attributed to Robert? We don't even have any spooky music or sound effects going with this. It's just white Times New Roman font on a black background. This is exposition at its laziest. If you can't even make the setup interesting, what hope do we have that the story itself is going to be any better? We then see what looks like the end of the movie, as a young couple and a psychic are trying to exorcise some spirits from their house.
There is a dark presence here. It's not the house that's haunted. It's the doll.
What, you mean that old thing is haunted? Nah, get out of here! By the way, this movie is trying way too hard to make this doll terrifying. People have said that the real Robert is pretty creepy, but that's because they're seeing something sinister inside him that cameras can't capture. Otherwise, he's kinda cute. The round face, the little button eyes. He almost looks like a Winnie the Pooh character. No one would ever suspect him of any wrongdoing. This thing, however, was designed to be pure evil. They're trying to make this doll a horror icon. What child is going to want to play with this monstrosity? After the title flashes on screen for a total of 2 seconds, that's encouraging, we meet the Otto family in what is clearly Key West, Florida.
Thanks, Mum.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Mrs. Otto.
Morning. Everything okay?
I'm looking for the dustpan and brush.
It's in the cupboard?
Sure are an awful lot of British folks in Florida, aren't there? Unfortunately, their maid Agatha here hasn't been doing her job as well as she should be, so it's up to Jenny to let her go. But not before she uses some really out-of-place scary music for her entrance. Then again, this isn't the weirdest music she's used when announcing her presence. However, Jenny does not fire Agatha because of her anxiety issues that we never see.
Any kind of confrontation makes me anxious.
And now you're in a movie featuring a haunted doll. This is gonna be good. Her anxiety is made only worse by the fact that her husband Paul is always at the office and never helps out around the house.
All I need is your support, Paul.
You got it.
The next morning, she took him out back and shot him executioner style. Jenny finally does manage to fire Agatha, so she says goodbye to the youngest Otto, Robert Eugene.
I've just come to say goodbye.
Why are you leaving?
I don't want to. But your mother says I have to.
Why?
I decapitate a few cats, summon a few demons, and suddenly I'm the bad guy. Your mother can be such a bitch. As a parting gift, she gives Jean this Willem Dafoe doll that she has named Robert.
Take Robert with you wherever you go. Look after him, and he'll look after you.
And be sure to take him with you whenever you go on a date. The ladies can't resist a man who carries around a doll. Yeah, he'll look after you with his one eye. Was he designed to look like the old man from the Telltale Heart?
Look, I really do appreciate everything that you've done for us. I wish it didn't have to end this way. I'm really sorry.
You will be.
Dear Robert movie, I'm afraid that my boss might fire me from my job very, very soon, but I can't think of anything really stupid to say in reaction to that. Do you have any suggestions? Since Paul gave some token assurance that he'll help out more around the house, Jenny is now able to go back to her old job of painting the most delightful pictures that could ever grace the American home. I'm amazed that she never got rich off of doing this. Both of Jean's parents are introduced to Robert, and naturally, none of them think it's kind of weird that their 12-year-old son tells them that the doll talks to him. The real Robert Eugene Otto was given the doll when he was 6, so his parents might have an easier time of accepting that since it's clearly a little boy using his imagination. But a jaded 12-year-old who thinks that everything is lame and is only interested in playing video games? If he says the doll is talking to him, maybe you want to take notice of that. Later that night, Jenny goes downstairs to find that the sugar has been ravaged by someone with tiny footprints. Of course, the obvious suspect is Gene, but he's sound asleep. Ew, confusing adults makes Robert touch himself!
Well, it's a nice day out there, so I thought we'd take the bicycles out for a spin. What do you say?
Okay. Can Robert come too?
Of course. Robert can come too.
Cool.
Wait, what? We didn't get to see the bike ride? Come on, we were supposed to see Gene ride past some of his friends who laugh at him for carrying a doll around. He beats the ever-loving shit out of them, then falls back on, "It wasn't me, it was Robert. Robert did it." Jenny has some more painting to do, when we cut to what is clearly a point-of-view shot from Robert walking around. The direction they're taking with this movie is all wrong. Just like the ambiguous appearance that the doll is supposed to have, the movie itself should be ambiguous about what's actually happening. By all accounts, it should look like everything strange happening is coming from Gene, but then when he blames it on the doll, you're left wondering, is he going insane? Does he really expect us to think the doll is doing it? Or is the doll really doing it? But no. We already know that the doll is haunted because not even 3 minutes into the movie, they just come out and say that the doll is haunted. The end! With the way this movie's going, all we're left wondering is when the doll is going to start slaughtering people, which, spoiler alert, never happened with the real Robert the Doll. He's just really, really creepy. He's not a serial killer. Anyway, Jenny finds her latest painting has been ruined. Jenny accuses Gene, Gene rats out Robert, and no one notices the very obvious red paint on his little shoes. Later that night, Jenny hears another voice coming out of Gene's bedroom, and Gene says that it was Robert. If there are any mothers out there that are watching my show, please be honest. A bunch of weird things start happening around your house, and your son tells you that this monstrosity is talking to him directly after you hear a voice which you cannot recognize. Do you, A, let him keep the doll, or B, throw it in the fireplace? The Ottos try their hand at a new maid, no doubt because Paul needs to maintain his apathetic, unhelpful, and possibly lecherous jerk status just like every husband in horror movies. She meets Robert himself when no one is around.
What the hell is that thing? Oh, that's messed up.
But Robert doesn't think they'll require her services any longer. Well, that was underwhelming. The first murder in the movie, and that's all that you give us? You couldn't even make her look scared or like she was in some kind of pain? You want to see a real death by staircase? Show 'em how it's done, The Haunting.
I've been unable to find out how or why she fell, although I have my suspicions.
just brilliant. Jenny comes home from wherever she goes to not sell her paintings, and calls an ambulance with her conspicuously outdated corded phone. I remind you, this movie is happening in the year 2015. If these filmmakers didn't have the budget to make a period piece set in the early 1900s like it's supposed to be, then fine. But who uses corded phones these days? Nice gash in the forehead, too. I guess Robert decided to give her a little something extra to try to not make it look like an accident.
What's the doll?
Why did they give Paul the spooky entrance music, too? He's a defense lawyer, not Jack Torrance.
She said something so strange to me when I found her.
What'd she say?
She said it was the doll.
And what does that mean exactly?
How many ways can that be interpreted? Jenny and Paul prepare to go out for date night, but she can't leave until she finds her lipstick. To her shock, she finds that someone has taken it and wrote "die" in the mirror. Sheesh, this movie really needed to take a cue from The Shining when Shelley Duvall spots the one ghost getting blown by a bear. She looks in, sees the two of them, quick zoom for a big what the fuck moment, then she's on her way. In this movie, she looks into Jean's room, then it takes 1 minute and 24 seconds for us to see what she saw immediately. Just have her look into the room, we cut to a point of view shot, quick zoom in on the lipstick, and boom! That's all we needed! She grabs Paul to show him what happened, but the mirror is now completely clean. Okay, maybe that's a direction to take this movie in too. It's not the doll, it's not Jean, it's the mom going insane. But again, that's all ruined because we know it's the doll that did it. What, did the doll sneak out of Jean's room, find the Windex, give the mirror a good thorough scrubbing, and then sneak back into his room all within the 43 seconds it took for Jenny to get Paul? They leave in their British car, nice job convincing us that this is happening in Key West movie, and they talk about what's been going on.
Ever since Agatha gave that doll to Jean, weird stuff's been happening.
Yeah, and why did you fire her again? Seriously, whatever drove you into firing her might be important. You said she was forgetting things? Okay, fine, that's obviously a cover story, but what is it covering? Do you know that she was dabbling in the black arts, and is that why you sacked her? If so, maybe her little warning about how you will be sorry makes a bit more sense now, don't it? If you knew that's what she was into, why would you ever let something like this around your child? They come home after driving around the block a few times, and while Gene is up at his room, the babysitter is nowhere to be found.
What the hell is going on with this girl, huh? She just walks out of here and leaves our son alone.
Jesus, what was she playing at?
You know what? This is ridiculous. I'm calling her house.
Jen, look, just calm down, okay?
You know, I've only been involved in a handful of romantic relationships in my time. I don't know exactly what to say every single time around the ladies, but I have picked this up. There are going to be times when she's stressed out, and she panics over what might be stressing her out. And as the man in the relationship, it is your duty to be soothing and be calming, and just kind of bring her down from whatever is making her panic. But for the love of God, do not tell her to calm down. You will die. She calls the sitter's house, only to find the cops on the other end who are cleaning up after her murder. Because cops will just freely give that information to anyone who calls on the phone.
What the hell happened?
just a kid. She was just a kid.
Yes, she was just a kid, but that doesn't explain how you somehow saw her murder at Robert's hand.
Sometimes things just happen all at once, Jens.
And if the movie didn't just come out and say that the doll is haunted, I might think that Paul is the one who did it. People say these things just happen when somebody falls down the stairs, or if they get involved in a car wreck or something. But if somebody says these things just happen in reaction to someone getting horribly murdered, that means they're the ones who did it! There is so much wasted potential in this movie that it makes my head spin. As the first act concludes, you're left thinking that Agatha will be the antagonist. Then you start thinking that maybe the son is maturing into a schizophrenic serial killer. Or maybe the mother's psyche is slowly falling apart right before her eyes. And now you think maybe the father has been a murderer this whole time, and he intentionally married someone with mental health issues so that if he's ever suspected of anything, he can just say, "Oh no, sweetheart, you're remembering it wrong. It's all in your head." But nope, the doll's haunted. No sense of mystery or suspense, the doll's just haunted. Enjoy your movie! Jenny goes upstairs and asks Jean about the doll.
You told me before that Robert speaks to you.
Yeah.
What does he say?
He says he wants to be best friends. Forever and ever.
Does he ever say anything nasty?
He says he thinks your accent is stupid and you're trying too hard.
Is Robert alive? Like a real person?
Yeah.
Why is Jean perfectly comfortable with telling her this? If the doll is alive, you'd think he would want to keep his existence under wraps. As such, why didn't he tell Jean to never talk about him or else bad things will happen? Again, referring to The Shining, Jean and Robert's relationship should be something more like that of Danny and Tony.
Does Tony ever tell you to do things?
I don't want to talk about Tony anymore.
He would especially need to threaten Jean about keeping him a secret since Jean is 12 years old, and he should be smart enough to tell his folks when things are going wrong. If Jean was 6 years old, like he's supposed to be, then it would make more sense for Robert to be less careful about hiding his secret, since who's going to believe the little kid saying his doll is alive? She finally takes Robert away, and how does she deal with him? Does she lock him in a box and throw him into the river? Does she toss him into a trash can and light him on fire? Does she strap him to a rocket and shoot him into space? Nope. First she yells at him to get him all riled up, then she just puts him in the tool shed out back. Yeah, no way he'll get out of that. She goes to Agatha's house the next day, and rather than treat us to some tense music while she infiltrates the home of the vile creature that swore revenge on her, they decided to let us make sure that she's walking on gravel. Thank you, Foley Man. Bang up job there. Then we meet the first American to ever appear in British Florida, a balding Hulk Hogan. Why not?
I'm looking for Agatha. Do you know her?
Sure. Lived next door to her for 25 years.
Well, is she expected home anytime soon?
Unfortunately, no. Agatha's new home is up in Oak Park Cemetery.
Do you mean she's dead?
No, she's a squatter there. She just spends all day rambling about how she lost the best job she ever had. Real sad, too. This neighbor lets Jenny inside, and she starts rummaging for clues. What is she looking for? A big book with the title, How I Did It? Ah, no, she found her daily planner instead. That should explain everything. Hex, 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 lunch. Hex, 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 afternoon tea. Back at home, Paul opens the unlocked door of the tool shed, and just when it looks like he's gonna get his, a squirrel makes off with the camera. Scary.
Hey, Jean, did you take Robert out of the shed?
No? Why was he in the shed?
Your mother put him in there.
Oh no.
What?
Robert's gonna be mad.
Jenny finds the address of Agatha's previous employer, and she goes to them for answers.
Hi. Agatha worked for my family for a couple of years. but she was getting kind of senile and forgetful.
Yeah. Actually, I think her health was kind of deteriorating back when she was working for us.
She was working for us? Uh-oh, your American accent is slipping. Reel it back in, chum.
The doll is the reason that my wife isn't well.
What do you mean?
You need to get rid of it. The evil can be contagious.
Yep, Robert sure is going to be mad. Anything on the telly?
Hey, where you going, pal?
Bed. Goodbye, Dad.
Usually we say goodnight, Jean.
I know. But this time it's goodbye.
Son of a bitch, why did the movie insist on telling us that the doll is haunted? That's such a creepy line, but coming from this kid who we know is perfectly fine, it doesn't make sense. Do you know what this movie is? This movie is a magician who goes on stage, very plainly tells the audience how all of his tricks work, and then he just does them. What is even the point?
I asked a psychic to come to the house to conduct a reading, and she told us that the doll had belonged to a boy named Robert Crow. He was murdered. His body found in a river, still clutching the doll.
Okay, but what pissed him off so bad that he feels the need to murder other people? Shouldn't the story of Robert the Doll be a revenge story on those who murdered him?
I locked him in the shed.
That's not enough to contain this evil spirit!
You need to lock him in a glass case. That'll do it.
You need to go home and destroy the doll. Rip it, stab it, burn it. Do whatever you have to destroy it, or it will destroy you!
We were going to destroy the doll ourselves, but we had to feed the cat. Well, okay, we had to get a cat first and then feed it. Jenny goes home to destroy the doll, but finds Paul on the floor after being bopped by a wiffle bat. Robert soon has her cornered, and just when it looks like she's about to be done in, she rises up to the challenge, faces her fears, overcomes her demons, and does absolutely nothing while Paul kills the doll by throwing a butter knife at it. What the kind of ending is this? The movie closes out on an epilogue 3 weeks later, where it looks like Paul is murdered by Robert despite how you think they would have immediately destroyed him after this little fiasco. But no, he's killed by Jean, because evil can be contagious or something. So that was Robert. It sucks. It's bad enough that this movie is awful on its own merits, but it's even worse when you consider how much wasted potential it has. The real story of Robert the Doll is truly the stuff of nightmares. Is the doll actually haunted, or are we simply looking into a dark reflection of our own psyches? In the hands of a talented director, this movie could have been something incredible. The unknown is one of mankind's deepest fears, and the movie could have left you guessing what's really going on from start to finish, really pulling you into the story and succumbing to the raw terror right along with the characters. But no, it's a dumb, predictable, run-of-the-mill killer doll movie that says nothing, does nothing, and offers nothing. In short, this movie is just a frustrating waste of time, and if Robert the Doll had seen it himself, this would be enough to send him into a killing spree. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a wench who's rather enjoying me eyeliner here, and I need to go shiver her timbers. See you later.
Hello, Dolly. This is Louis Dolly. Fighting back, give you back where you belong. You looking swell, Dolly. I can tell, Dolly. You keep going, still going, you still going strong. Yeah, bro. Yeah, boy. Ba-da-ba-dee, my old favorite tunes for when they win. Oh, yeah, my. And no rap, but us what? Them to get on and down. I'm